complicated by working in that space, and I think, you know, we can't ignore that. And I think we need to at least
It's a good point.
have that documented so that some board down the road isn't faced with a claim and people saying, well, why didn't you do it when you had a chance?
Good point. We will do that. There's no action necessary at this point in time. Just report to the board unless there's any other comments.
Do anybody want to?
We'll proceed to implement the moves.
Ken?
Quick comment, Kenneth Bunch, Lassen County Assessor. I appreciate the comments made by Mr. Chapman. I inspected with my senior appraisal staff the area currently occupied by the district attorney's office and considered all the options, and it's a resource allocation. The district attorney's needs are much greater than ours at this point. We waived this participation in the reorganization of the office of this courthouse at this time, hoping that eventually the DA's office and probably the public defender can move closer to the actual active courtrooms. So at some time in the future, you know, we will be requesting a move, but the greatest need right now is in the district attorney's office. Thank you for consideration.
So everybody's happy with this plan?
Yes.
Bob's happy?
Bob is exceptionally tickled by the proposition that for the first time in 15 years, I might have all of my employees housed in one location. So yes, absolutely. I think that would remove one of the inefficiencies that we face. The next issue, of course, would be getting closer to the active courtrooms, but this is a short-term, 5-year
Sure.
issue.
All right,
Thank
thank you, Bob. And I'm glad it's working out. Okay, we're gonna move on.
Sorry,
What?
appreciation to county admin folks for helping facilitate this.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to F1.
Mr. Chairman, this is my item. I actually have 2 vacancies currently on the February, and on the agenda item, it shows Tim Bruce as active, and Jose Pino, he's kind of, they only have 1 lane on him.
Well, he's, should be in the back.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
cut that. Both of those have, Jose has been reassigned and is working down in, at Folsom down in Sacramento, and is away from the community. And Tim, of course, he's retired, and he's currently living over in the Reno area. He does come back, both of them actually do come back and from time to time help with the fair. But we need to have 2 active members. And a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Walcott and I and Todd Ide, who's the chair of the fair board, had an opportunity to have interviews of the applicants for the position. 2 of them live in the district and 2 of them live outside of my district. It doesn't make a difference because they live in Lassen County and that's what matters. But after doing the interviews, we decided to recommend that the board appoint Lonnie Mahinsky and Jason Bernard as the new fair board members, and I so move.
Second? Second. Motion is second. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to Jim Walcott for providing the assistance. I think he started doing that when Larry did, and that was an excellent model. And first time we've done it in our district, but it was a good exercise, and I think we got 2 good members.
Was everybody unanimous on your recommendations?
Yeah, Todd and Jim both supported the recommendation, yes.
Okay, any more questions?
The other 2 applicants, by the way, are excellent, and hopefully if they have an opportunity in their respective districts to serve, I'd recommend that you give them high consideration.
Can you keep these on these lists for any other vacancies?
If the interest is there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Let's take the information consent calendar. Somebody had one to pull off.
I had item G4 I'd like to have pulled off.
Take G4
And G2?
and G2. Okay, the remaining, we have a motion to pass it. Second. Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. G2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious, was this the deal? Well, first I thought it was worth pulling off. I mean, it's a considerable amount of money. Is this the program that we do every year? with
The annual
George?
trapper program, yes.
I thought so, yeah.
Same exact program.
George.
And it's, George Alphonse. It's important to note, and actually it came up last week at the RAC meeting, BLM RAC meeting, roughly $38,000 to $40,000 of funding for this here comes into the county through the Taylor Grazing Act. We had one gentleman, Mr. Phillips, who thinks that we should take that money and use it to fund some rack activities that they have in terms of for predator animal, but the county has historically used that money to offset a portion of this trapper cost, and the rest of it, for the most part, is also funded through federal sources. This is kind of the pass-through, it's nested in our budget.
I thought so, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. The first year Larry was on the board, he made the mistake and questioned that, and he had a room full of people going to know about the program.
You got a motion and a second? Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. I've had it, we'll move on to four, G4.
Yeah, G4, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to, I received this morning from Jeff Fontana. He sent through, and I was gonna try to print it out, but I didn't get a chance to. But the comments that were made, that are gonna be made by the Northeast RAC 2 BLM on the sage grouse EIS, I wanna make sure that that becomes a big part of the, you might say, the content of the letter that will eventually be considered. And we're talking about bringing it back in January for the board letter to do it. And staff, I know Galen was there for a big part of it, and then Matt sat through the balance of it. But I will forward that to staff so that we can make sure and incorporate a lot of the recommendations that they made in terms of making improvements. It focuses primarily on alternative D. There are several alternatives that are out there. And alternative D is really the consensus of the BLM agencies and the Forest Service agencies in our sub-region, because this grouse thing goes all the way out to North Dakota and Montana and Wyoming. I mean, it's a huge geographic area, and they have these sub-regions. So the professional folks in Nevada and in northeastern California kind of pulled together, and they came up with their recommendations, and the RAC critiqued that, and we actually made some suggested modifications to it. In addition, there was one additional thing, and it kind of goes to the predatory control issue, but Governor Sandoval in Nevada commissioned a work group within Nevada, of all the stakeholders in Nevada, to also do a critique based on what they see are the unique issues in Nevada itself. And so they have actually making recommendations on what is alternate E, and it does vary to a degree from what we see in alternate D being proposed by the BLM and Forest Service and other professional groups in the two states. But the one area within the Nevada proposal, and it was Section 9, and I've got that information as part of it, dealt with, in particular, the predatory animal control aspect, more so managing the raven population as being a major threat to the flex and the sage grouse habitat, I mean the actual home nests and so forth. And so the BLM RAC here also included that as part of their recommendation. So we took in part from the Nevada folks in alternate E and merged that in there. So I'd like to see all that as part of our overall letter of comments that we would input. It would reinforce what the BLM RAC has come forth as well. Now, if staff has any additional, this thing is like a 1,000-page, 2-volume, 1,000-page, but it's available in an electronic form. While they were all complaining about lugging around and getting a hernia, I just, with my iPad, accessed all the documents, I mean, the volumes, the sections. But if you have time over the holidays coming up here in the next 2-3 weeks and you want to go online and access, I can get you the contact how to do that. But it's very interesting read. Tom, you might find it interesting as well. It also gets involved in some of the energy-related issues because in terms of transmission corridors and energy facilities, how they're sited and within the 3-mile buffers. I mean, there are a number of those kind of issues from a planning perspective that I think the county has a specific interest in, and I think staff has already dialed in on some of that. So hopefully between now and that January 14th timeframe, we could have that all packaged so we can get that submittal put in prior to that January 29th deadline. So to me, it was I went there with other expectations, but I learned a whole lot about how this process works, and I think it would be very important from our coordinating council perspective, supporting their efforts. I believe they'll be making some comments as well, and I think they were taking copies of a lot of the notes from the discussions from last Wednesday, and we'll be probably doing a parallel kind of input. So that's what I kind of wanted off. meant to print that off, but I realize I don't have that with me, but I will make sure that that gets distributed to the board and to the staff.
You wanna make a motion?
So the request is this item be continued to January 14th,
Four-
with the letter modified to reflect the discussions of the North Sea
Yeah,
threat,
we'll
particularly
take-
supporting alternate D.
Yeah, supporting alternate D with inclusions of portions of alternate E. And that's dealing with the predatory animal control issue as it relates to or threat.
He understands.
I do, but may I add a little bit? Is that okay?
Yes, you may.
I've also met with the Cattlemen's Association, and of course, they're very interested in this and concerned about it. And they have a consultant that they've hired to do some analysis. And another option is to kind of bring some of those comments into this when I bring it back on the 14th as well. And, there's other things in addition to the right-of-way, which is spot on. There's potential mining issues too, for mining that occurs on public lands. And so there are a variety of things. So we're doing our best to kind of sort through it, put it in context of our general plan and policies that the county has adopted, and do our best to bring something that works well. We got kind of late notice of this. I didn't get a copy until December 4th. I actually found out about it right before Thanksgiving, but then of course we're going into the holidays, and I went on vacation with my family, so there really hasn't been a lot of time. The request for additional time was genuine and heartfelt, but basically U.S. Fish and Wildlife is picking it up October 1st, and that means they have to have whatever they're going to have in place by the end of September to have it be included in that analysis.
Yeah, I think what the action today is to make a motion to approve the chair to sign the letter to send in requesting the extension and continue the discussion to January 14th for the formulation of this letter. What the agenda item is actually focusing on getting this request for an extension. I can tell you right now, based upon what we learned last week, the response to this is thanks, but no thanks, we're not going to amend the time frame. But I think we should be on record to request it, and I think that's a generally consensus around all the groups that are out there, whether BLM will acquiesce, the big guys, not our local guys, but the big guys will acquiesce and allow for that to happen because of the court case that's involved that they're trying to satisfy.
You wanna make that your motion?
Yeah, I make that motion now, but then continue the discussion on the format of the letter. And I think the other parties that Galen has referred to, the intent of that motion was to incorporate any and all other comments that could be forthcoming from other groups and from staff. But at a minimum, I want to make sure that those comments from the BLM RAC are part of that body of the input we give in.
Okay, we got a second. We got a second from Marion. Any more discussion?
I got one other thing, Galen, when you're talking about this, if you go talk to Tim Kesey, I'm not sure, I know he works at the fire station.
To the degree that I can,
I remember hearing him one time, it was 3 or 4 years ago, he made a very interesting comment as a registered biologist, is that he said that the wild horses are a non-native animal. And that was the first time I ever heard a biologist say anything like that, so maybe visit with him about that, and it's part of the record, the wild horses are part of this whole thing too. And that whole wild horse issue, anyway, that's
Okay.
just another question.
Any more
I have a
comments?
question for Galen. The cattlemen's are against the extension of this?
No. They're for the extension of it, most definitely. They're very concerned about the EIS and the listing of the sage grouse and the impact that it's going to have to ranching and grazing activities on public lands. Even option D has, there's a lot of impacts to grazing in option D.
And the comments that the RAC entertained really spoke to a lot of those cattle-related type issues that we're talking about incorporating.
What about the energy issues with the sage grouse being endangered?
Well, this is for a management strategy to hopefully help prevent the listing. But yes, different options have different effects on issuance of right of ways and
Yeah.
new energy projects and what would happen there. So it's we're here this in an hour we're going to talk about
that was
energy,
my
and
next.
it kind of leads right into that
Yeah.
because often these energy projects are on the public-private or federal private I should say, and
Okay, we'll talk
Well,
about that at
what's
1:30.
what's interesting though about, on that very point, dealing with the endangered species listing for the grouse, is the raven is also apparently is on the endangered list right now. So the issue comes down to is either they've been successful and have gotten now the raven population back to a point where it's now threatening the sage grouse population. So that maybe if they're gonna be listing the sage grouse, they need to look at delisting the ravens so that they could be brought under control to take the pressure off of the sage grouse. So that all played
That's
out in
common
the,
sense,
yeah.
so. I don't know if that
Let's, vote. On favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it, we'll move on.
Each one,
Each one,
minutes?
minutes of November 19th and November 8th.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion and second, any discussion? On favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. H3.
On the minutes of the 19th, I abstained.
Okay. Supervisor Wazi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a letter, this comes before us as, by way of our coordination council. You remember the meeting we had where the, basically the council, suggested that we send this letter due in part to some of the items listed in, travel and analysis report. They highlighted 640 miles of ML2 roads to be assigned ML1 closed to travel, and so on. It lists some of the bullet points here, but we, as a council, voted to present this to the board to send a letter to Randy Moore. So I move for approval.
Second.
I'll second it.
Got a second, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. That takes us to, where we at here?
Eight. The auditor is here, we've been working with the rec district up in Beaver to get the money to the pool, and I think Karen is in contact with them, has or about to receive the necessary paperwork so that we can pay that claim.
Well, this is the first contact we've had with them since, I believe, 1991. So we are playing catch-up on gathering information. I'm speaking to, I know you were in, I can't remember the name right now.
Thompson.
Maria?
Rosemary.
Rosemary Thompson. And so she's working on gathering everything. They have some members, board members whose terms are expiring, or did expire December 5th. So anyway, they are meeting. We may be a little ways off, but we're making progress.
What do you mean you haven't had contact with them since 1991? Because Supervisor Dolly out of his discretionary funds had allocated monies to do exactly what this money
Yeah.
is going for, so you would have had some contact with them on that end.
Well, I don't know the amount that Brian designated for him. It wasn't a large amount.
Well,
We have not had any real contact with them.
Sometimes it'd be a couple $1,000s. I mean, he's,
That's not my recollection, but perhaps, so.
and then we also have the grant funds that we administered for doing the
One sub.
no, not the one stop. This is on the pool, but they have, what's the, yeah, the changing room, whatever. I mean, we've
Oh,
actually.
the bathhouse?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're correct there, so.
So, I mean,
So
we've
I'm,
had-
okay,
we've
in that
had
regard, I
contact with them over
misspoke,
the
and
years, so.
obviously we have had some communication regarding the bathhouse. I haven't had communication, me personally, so.
I just want to make sure the record's clear that, you know, these guys haven't been around for 20 years, because they have been.
Oh, they've been around, I'm aware, and operating the pool, I am aware of that. As far as the auditor's office, we haven't had a lot of dealings with them.
Well, Brian made sure that they was plugged in, so
Okay.
And last, Mr. Chairman, on I-1, I ought to take recognition, the planning department doesn't get nice letters very often.
Right, okay, with that, we will go back in and finish closed session. I was just, of course,
Yeah, they
wanted
put the consent.